And the therapy section, as I said, is currently under development, but will feature all of the evidence for the different therapies linked to autism. So the next section is our brain biology section, and this is written by our neuroscientists, and essentially we go through the core symptoms of autism, the social brain, the repetitive behavior, and the communication, and explain how those things are processed in the brain. And we describe what might potentially be altered in autism, although this isn't known for sure right now. And we also go through just general brain development, how brains develop and the critical periods of development. And we also talk about experience, so how important experience is for the brain. And because the brain is always changing, it's always very plastic. And so the kinds of experience we get with the environment are critical for how the brain develops. And we go through challenges for scientists and just autism as a complex neuropsychiatric disorder. So if I click on, let's say, social brain, for instance, this is my intro page again where I have the key questions which I can navigate. I also have key points at the bottom and a misconception and a fact. So let's say I wanted to click on what are key parts of the social brain circuit. So here we describe the limbic system, which is a major system involved in emotion and implicated in autism. And we show the major parts of the limbic system here with our brain model pictures, and you can read about the individual sections. So that's our brain biology section. And then in advances, we try and explain what's up and coming in the autism research world. So we go through brain imaging. There's amazing advances being done in technologies for brain imaging and the discovery of how autistic brains might function differently. And then we have biomarker development. So this means that scientists are trying to find a way to detect autistic brains early, because the earlier you treat them with behavioral therapy, the better off they will be. And then we also have stem cell-based research. So stem cells are not currently being used for therapy, but you can use them to find out what's wrong with cell function in the autistic brains. So let me click on one of these, brain imaging. So we go through basically, what is a brain, how are they imaged, what are all the different types of brain imaging, etc. For biomarkers, we can go through the possible ways of early detection and what could they be used for. And stem cells, like I said, they're not being used for therapy, but they are being used to explore how neurons in autistic brains might function differently. And so let me get to our last section here, which is tools, and that refers back to the toolbox that I mentioned in the beginning, which is one of them is the autism quiz, and there's also the autism dictionary, and we have a public policy forum that is a guide to international policy about autism. And then the last thing in our toolbox was the news, but that's actually connected to the trends section. So if we don't have any questions yet, I can go through the autism quiz. If you have any questions, please just type them in and I'll be happy to answer any of them. We have a variety of scientists, neuroscientists, geneticists, statisticians, and we're all happy to answer anything that you might have. Right. So let me take you back to the autism quiz, which you can get to from the reading room here, but you can also, as I said, it's a free app on iTunes, and it's currently under development for Android. So, for instance, the basic quiz. So here's question 1, which is not a type of autism spectrum disorder. And so if I were to answer this correctly, I'd pick C, schizophrenia. And then you can actually see the answers that other people have done. And so everybody here picks C. But let's say I go to the next question and pick an incorrect answer. Actually, this is an old question. So that has to be updated. But so say I go back to question 1, which is not a type of autism spectrum disorder. Say I put in Asperger and submit my answer. It will tell me I'm incorrect, and it will tell me why and what the correct answer is. And then I can also see how other people have answered it. So the goal with that is just to spread as much knowledge as possible throughout social media. And so let me take you to the news page. And so every time an important science news story comes out, we try and publish it here and link it back to the section of the reading room that is relevant. So for instance, when the new stats came out, the 1 in 88, that was here. Brain differences were found as early as 6 months old in a new type of brain imaging called DTI. So that story is here, and we link it back to different sections of the reading room. So you can check here for a guide to how the research fits into the big picture. So one thing I can do, the brain video clip. So we actually had a forum, an autism reading room forum, where we had guest scientists come and speak about all of these sections of the reading room. And so I'm going to show you now, it's about a 3-minute clip about the brain biology from, this is the scientist from Children's National Medical Center. And he's speaking about his research and what they currently know about brains in autism. One second.
So I am here at Children's National Medical Center. I do research on brain development. Primarily look at mouse as a model of human brain development. Surprisingly, the mouse fulfills this role quite well. The processes of forming the brain of the fetus, putting together different circuits that regulate different parts of the regulate different behaviors are quite conserved through evolution. And what we do is we try to understand the genetic and cellular basis of how the social brain is set up. So what's going to come up on this slide is actually a diagram of the human limbic system. And as you know, the brain has a number of different structures within it that regulate different behaviors. There are structures for language, there are structures for vision, as well as a whole host of other structures. And this beautiful rendering drawn by my very talented postdoctoral fellow, who also part-time as an artist, as you can see. What you can see is that, so this is a sort of peering into the human brain, a cross-section of the human brain. Some of you may be familiar with this type of rendering of a human brain. And if you just peer inside, you can see these color-coded different structures, some of which are circular, ovoid, different orientations. And what this is actually the limbic system of the brain, which is also known as the social. It's really this part of the brain that regulates how humans and other species, including mice, take in information from the environment for appropriate behavioral output. And in humans, we're quite social. So what we do is we recognize other people, we recognize their faces, we communicate with them and have appropriate cues in response to the conversations or social cues that are coming into our brains. Now, it's this system in autism, at least the social part, that appears to be disrupted or disturbed in some specific way. And specifically, that has to do with development.
Okay, so if you have any sections of Autism Reading Room that you'd like me to go back to in particular, please let me know. We can go more depth into one area. But really the idea is for you just to have an overview of the resource so you can use it on your own time. But we're happy to answer any questions or explain more sections for you. So let me go through the slider in the meantime. So the first slider that I showed you was the counter with the number of autism research papers total as of today, and this is updated every time a new one is published. The research trends on the second tab shows you a distribution of topics for autism research. So you can see from this graph that genetics right now is the most heavily researched area, followed by non-pharmaceutical therapy and brain imaging, and then we also have pharmaceutical therapy, biomarkers, and stem cells. So these are things that you can actually do yourself in the trend section. Is you can do searches for whatever you want, let's say environmental factors, and you can see how much research is being done on environmental factors compared to these other ones. And then the what is autism links directly to the autism profile in the clinic section. And the risk factors links to the genes and the environment that we talked about earlier. And if you look down here again, I can take you through statistics, which goes directly to the stats page of the trend section. Okay, so we have our first question, and the question is, can you explain the latest research on genetic risk factors? That is, how many genes are there? So in our scientific research here at MindSpec, we actually created a genetic database for autism which compiles all of the known risk genes for autism. And right now our database is up to 369, I believe. And there's predicted to be as high as 1,000 genes involved. And basically, let me take you to the risk factors genetics page. And if we click on what are the genetic risk factors for autism, Autism Reading Room actually takes you through the different genes and the different chromosomal aberrations. So we try and explain in as simple terms as possible what genes are and how different variants of genes might make you more susceptible to autism. And also the same with the chromosomal aberrations. There's different types that you can have. And there's different ones that are linked to autism. And so if we click on the next page, this actually explains in more detail what, as far as chromosomes are concerned, what is a copy number variant and why are they important risk factors for autism. And then we have another question, which is there a genetic test available, which is actually our next question, so our next page. So there is actually genetic testing available now for autism, but the problem is these only identify a genetic cause in about 15 to 20% of individuals with autism. So most of the time, autistic individuals will go in for testing and not find any genetic factor associated with them that's currently known. So what's being done now is that the genetic evaluation is actually important for appropriate medical management and family counseling. So if you do happen to find a genetic link to your form of autism, perhaps it could guide the best way for treatment for you. But as I said, right now there's nothing available for diagnosis of autism.